there's absolutely no way to do hormones well and have the patient get the most ideal outcomes unless you take an integrative approach. There's just no version where HRT isn't part of an integrative approach if you want optimal outcomes. If you're doing this on your own and you're trying to sort it out on your own and you're following health gurus on the internet, I can't even imagine them to get things going. But if you're not applying the spark, which is the exercise, specifically strength training, if you're not applying the spark, none of this will work for very long. And you'll just end up spending, this shit's expensive, you guys. I don't know if you've looked into the fact that like, there's not a bottle of BPC 157 on the market below $100. I mean, this shit's expensive. And the other thing that no one's talking about is that many of these peptides, the fact that many of them are regenerative in their impacts, whether directly or indirectly, they're doing that by upregulating VEGF. And VEGF, I'm very familiar with. It is one of the main constituents of platelets. This is when we do platelet rich plasma, which I've done a ton of. I had a very, very busy platelet-rich plasma practice. So busy, in fact, that the rep for the company who sold me the kits came in one day and was like, "What are you doing? You are outselling everyone in this town. You are literally outselling everyone in this town." And some of the dudes in this industry, in this, regenerative medicine in Portland, I mean, I was down the street from one of the most famous regenerative medicine doctors in the world, and they had big, huge, multi-million-dollar clinics. And here I am in my little clinic just cranking out PRP patients because I'm fast and I'm good at what I do. But VEGF is one of the main growth factors in there. And VEGF is what cancer uses to metastasize. So when a tumor metastasizes and starts throwing mets, it's using VEGF to do that. And so many of these peptides, either directly or indirectly, upregulate VEGF. So why are there so many health influencers and doctors and non-credentialed people and everyone on the internet trying to sell you peptides and not telling you this and not telling you that you need to cycle them? And how do you cycle them? Completely depends on the individual and what we're using them for. What are we using them for? Now, the bodybuilding community gets this. Like, none of this is new information to that community. None of this is new information to a lot of the folks who've been doing this a long time, because they understand we use the minimum necessary dose to get the job done, and we cycle it. Everything's in a cycle, right? And I can't give you a cookie cutter answer of what that cycle is here. I go into the logic around that inside my course. You don't just stay on BPC 157 forever. If you're taking that in a pill because some influencer told you to, or some health coach told you to, or some doctor who's totally new to this and has no idea what they're doing told you to, they're wrong. Like, these are all pro-grow. They're all pro-grow. And it's critical that we have those conversations with our patients and that we carefully watch them and that we carefully analyze as we go. And we weave and dodge as we go, right? We see how they respond. We see if we need to tinker with the dosing any, and then we cycle them. We keep a watchful eye on them, and we do it responsibly. And that's how this works. That's the best version of this kind of medicine. And I understand that you guys want to access it and do it at home. And that's why I'm making this episode, because so many people are accessing it. They're getting gray market peptides. They're literally injecting themselves with a bunch of vials from the internet, and they have no idea where these things came from or how to do it. Now, I'm not dissing all the gray market research labs. It is, by the way, doctors, those of you listening who are doctors, if you are getting gray market peptides and you are dispensing them to your patients, you are breaking the law and you will lose your license eventually. It's crazy to me. There's whole research labs, I'm not going to name names, that are just selling to doctors, calling them medical grade, and they're only selling to health professionals, and these doctors are buying them and stocking them and dispensing them out of their clinic. And these are all peptides that have been put as basically, I don't want to use the word illegal, but the FDA withdrew them from access. So doctors can no longer prescribe them. So in September of 2023, I believe, the FDA came in and took a bunch of peptides away from us that we could no longer prescribe. So compounding pharmacies could no longer prescribe them. But you can still get them from the gray market, and there are people getting them. There are doctors ordering them from these gray market resources. And many times they don't know, they don't understand that they're doing anything wrong. I had a sweet woman the other day message me, a physician, and she said, I just love BPC 157. It fixes everything. And I was like, oh, what brand do you like these days? Because we can only get it orally, And she's like, oh no, I inject it. And I was like, you can't do that. And you can't do that anymore. And she's like, oh yeah, I just buy it from this place. And I looked up the place and I'm like, oh my gosh. So this woman had no idea. So there's a lot of things happening and I can't control the conversation and I can't fix it. I can just inform people of some of the things that are happening, and it's bizarro land out there. So if you're with a doctor who knows what they're doing and you're getting the peptides that you need and you're doing it responsibly, congratulations and more power to you. There's a lot of doctors saying that they're microdosing GLP-1s, but they're actually just standard dosing, and their patients are getting really lean and feeling awful and not knowing why. And it's because they're on a standard starting dose, but that's covered in the other podcast episode. But even with HRT, did you know that if you have a really messed up gut, if your gut health is really screwed up and you've got a lot of organisms in there that are spewing out lipopolysaccharides, that it could significantly impact the way that hormones work in your body? It could significantly flare histamine levels, which will significantly impact the way hormones work in your body, and not in a good way. I did a whole Histamine 101 episode too. We'll link that in the show notes as well. I'm trying to put together this puzzle for you. So you have to treat the gut. You have to treat the adrenals. You have to treat the thyroid. If you don't treat the adrenals and thyroid, then the patient will bonk when you hit them with progesterone and estrogen and testosterone. There's things that have to be considered here. And I'm not saying the way I do it is perfect by any means, but it's comprehensive because, how do I say this? There's a lot of doctors right now on the menopause scene talking about how fantastic estrogen is and simultaneously dogging integrative health while simultaneously selling supplements themselves, while simultaneously dogging integrative health. But I'm here to tell you there's absolutely no way to do hormones well and have the patient get the most ideal outcomes unless you take an integrative approach. There's just no version where HRT isn't part of an integrative approach if you want optimal outcomes. So that takes me back to my original point is if you're doing this on your own and you're trying to sort it out on your own and you're following health gurus on the internet and you're piecemealing it together, I can't even imagine. I run into trouble myself. I personally run into trouble with my hormones as I'm trying to balance things out. And I know what I'm doing because my body doesn't always cooperate with what I know, right? And what I know to be true isn't always what my body decides it wants to do. So I say this with warning, and here's how we can level the playing field. Here's how we can, whether you're dabbling by yourself, whether you're going through Bro Science University, whether you have a doctor that's completely new to hormones and they're trying their best to get you what you need, whether you have a doctor who has no idea what they're doing, but they're willing to prescribe to you and you're trying to sort it out yourself, and you don't want to buy my course and you don't want to read my book, go to the gym. You have to go to the gym. There's no version where you get to take GLP-1s especially, but any peptide or any hormone, in my opinion, you do not get to use them unless you're going to the gym. You will have them go down pathways you don't want and that you don't like. And I dare say I have seen way too many labs where the pathway is Dutch in particular and other testing systems I've done where, or you just look at the symptoms, hormones are going down the pathway we do not want. Some of these pathways are not favorable for long-term outcomes. And it's not just that the person doesn't feel well. I mean, some of these estrogen pathways are pro-cancer, right? So if you exercise regularly, specifically like getting on a sweat, getting on movement, mobility, Pilates is great, yoga is great, walking is okay. I mean, you got to walk. That I don't consider walking exercise. I consider walking like water. It's just a non-negotiable. The people who walk a long ways, that is exercise for sure. But the rest of us just need to get our 10,000 steps in and not consider it. That's not our workout for the day. That's just a baseline being a human, right? If you go to the gym, you end up sparking and balancing different biochemical and hormonal pathways in your body that you wouldn't get otherwise. And so it's kind of the great leveler. You end up upregulating GLUT4 receptors when just by the act of I should call them transporters, GLUT4 transporters. By the act of squeezing your muscle, you allow the transporters that are necessary to go to the cellular membrane, open and receive glucose from your blood, so your blood sugars come down. And you don't have to be completely insulin dependent, because everyone thinks it's all about insulin and insulin resistance. And I know I talk about that a lot. Inside my course, I think it's module 2, I go deep into the science of this and the biochemistry of this. But if we are just relying completely on insulin working, which it is not in good shape for most people, insulin resistance is like rampant, right? I would say the majority of Americans have insulin resistance easily, at least 95%, just by the looks of things. That's a really rough way to just depend on metabolic health working, is making it all dependent on insulin. And this is what the people who never exercise and just go keto, you see people like, I was super overweight and now I'm really thin. And here's myself and my husband and we're rail thin on keto. And they never went to the gym. They're relying 100% on insulin doing the job. And that's just too much pressure for the poor pancreas, period. So, I mean, to me, that's like taxing the pancreas as hard as you were when you were insulin resistant. You got to get the GLUT4 transporters up there. And we can do that by autophagy or intermittent fasting, which induces some autophagy. And we can get the AMPK pathway going that way. We can get SIRT1, AMPK. I don't mean to get too nerdy. It's just we can't get the cellular pathways revved nearly as well without the spark. And that spark comes from good, well-trained skeletal muscle and movement. So, and squeezing of the muscles, actual squeezing of the muscles. And there's a lot more to this that I don't want to unpack that I do. I have a whole module on exercise inside the course where I deep dive into, I like nerd out on exercise, but you have to, the bottom line is you have to go to the gym multiple times a week and you have to move. And you have to get a sweat on. You cannot just rely on these peptides. They will waste you. There is a study, I haven't gone through it yet. I just saw a blip of it. Just came out showing that cardiorespiratory fitness declined in GLP-1 users. And I'm guessing it was probably the non-exercise arm. I have to look at it. Why? It's what I have been hypothesizing, which is I do believe that they have a way of wasting you by over-revving the AMPK pathway. AMPK balances with mTOR. So when you rev up AMPK, you decrease mTOR, and mTOR is what we need to build. A lot of Americans are sitting sort of in mTOR dominance and they need that AMPK bump. But I think when you go too far this way, if you're not, and guess what? It gets mTOR to work, strength training and protein. If that isn't balanced, you get into a wasting state. On this episode of the Dr. Tina Show, we're going to have a talk because I am seeing an absolute disaster unfold, and I want to make sure that I at least try to intervene before the train wrecks completely. Here's the thing. All the peptides you guys are being sold.